At the custody mediation, my mother looked straight at the judge and said I was unfit to raise my own child. She didn't lower her voice. She didn't hesitate. She said it clearly, as if she had practiced the sentence in front of a mirror. My daughter is not capable of keeping that child safe, she said. There was an incident, a serious one. I sat there with my hands folded in my lap, trying to keep my breathing steady. My son was not in the room. He was 3 years old, too young to understand what custody meant. Too young to know that his grandmother was trying to take him away from me. My name is Elena. I am 32 years old, and I have never missed a doctor's appointment. Never left my child unattended near a road. Never gone to bed without checking the doors twice. But that morning, in a quiet mediation office with beige walls and a long wooden table, my own mother described me as a danger. The mediator, a calm woman in her 50s, looked between us carefully. "Mrs. Alvarez," she said to my mother, "please explain the incident you are referring to." My mother folded her hands, her expression controlled and serious. "2 months ago," she began, "my grandson was found near the front gate, unsupervised. The gate was open. He could have walked straight into the street. Elena was not paying attention. Not paying attention. The words felt heavier than they should have. He could have been hit by a car," she continued. "I was the one who ran outside and grabbed him." I felt heat rise in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. "That's not what happened," I said quietly. The mediator looked at me. "Then tell me what did happen." I swallowed and forced myself to speak clearly. "That day, my mother was watching him while I was upstairs on a work call," I explained. "She told me she had him in the living room." My mother shook her head immediately. "She stepped away," she interrupted. "She assumed I was watching him." "That's not true," I replied, my voice tightening despite my effort to stay composed. "You insisted you had him." The mediator raised a hand gently, one at a time. The room felt smaller by the second. My mother leaned forward. "Elena has always struggled with focus," she said carefully. "She becomes overwhelmed easily. I've seen it since she was young. This was not just about one afternoon anymore. She was building a picture of me. Unstable, distracted, inattentive." "You believe this was a pattern?" the mediator asked her. "Yes," my mother said firmly. This wasn't the first time I worried. That sentence hit harder than the accusation itself, because now it sounded like I had a history, like I had repeatedly failed. "I am his mother," I said, my voice steady now. "I have raised him alone since his father left. He is healthy. He is safe. He is loved." "That may be," my mother replied, "but love is not enough if a child can wander into the street." The mediator scribbled notes. "And is there documentation of this event?" she asked. My mother nodded. "The security camera footage was erased," she said. "But I saw it with my own eyes." Erased. That word made my pulse quicken. She thought it was gone. I looked down at my bag beside my chair. Inside it was a small flash drive. I had not planned to use it unless I had to. But as I listened to her describe me as careless, as I watched the mediator's expression shift slightly toward concern, I realized something very clearly. If I stayed silent, the story would become hers. And if the story became hers, I could lose my son. The mediator turned back to me. "Ms. Alvarez," she said gently, "do you have anything further to add before we move forward?" I lifted my eyes to meet hers. "Yes," I said, and for the first time since the meeting began, I allowed myself to feel something stronger than hurt. I felt ready, because my mother believed the footage had been erased. She didn't know I had made a copy the very night it happened, and in a few minutes, that quiet room would see exactly who opened the gate. 2 months before that mediation, it had been an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. My son Mateo had just finished lunch. He was in the living room building towers out of plastic blocks. My mother had come over earlier that day because I had a scheduled video meeting for work. She insisted she would help. "You focus on your call," she told me. I'll watch him. I remember hesitating for a second. Not because I didn't trust her completely, but because Mateo had just learned how to reach the handle of the front gate by standing on a small decorative planter near the fence. I had moved the planter once already. Make sure the gate is locked, I reminded her. It's fine, she said, almost offended. I've raised children before, so I went upstairs to my bedroom, closed the door halfway, and joined my meeting. 20 minutes later, I heard shouting. Elena! It wasn't panic at first. It was urgency. I rushed downstairs and out the front door. My heart dropped when I saw the gate wide open and my son standing near the sidewalk. Confused. One shoe half off his foot. My mother was a few steps behind him, reaching out and pulling him back inside. He was outside, she said breathlessly. Where were you? I stared at the open gate. I was upstairs. You said you were watching him. You must have left the gate unlocked earlier, she replied immediately. No, I said. I always double-check it. We argued for several minutes. Mateo was crying now, overwhelmed by the noise. I saw him walk out, she insisted. You weren't paying attention. I was on a call because you told me you had him. She shook her head. You should never assume someone else is fully responsible. You're his mother. That sentence planted something inside me. Guilt. Even though I knew I had locked the gate that morning. Even though I knew she had told me clearly that she was watching him. That evening, after she left, I checked the security camera app on my phone. We had installed the cameras after a break-in the previous year. They covered the driveway, the front door, and the gate. The footage showed something very different from what she described. It showed her stepping outside alone to take a phone call. It showed her opening the gate slightly while she stood near it. It showed Mateo pushing the gate further open while she was turned away, laughing into her phone. It showed her not noticing him leave for nearly 30 seconds. 30 seconds can feel like a lifetime when it involves a child near a road. When she realized he was gone, she dropped the phone and ran. I watched the clip 3 times. Then I saved it. Not because I wanted to prove her wrong, but because I had a feeling she would rewrite it. The next day, she came over again and said something that confirmed my instinct. You should delete that camera system, she told me. It makes you paranoid. Why? I asked. It's unnecessary. Families shouldn't spy on each other. Spy. That word didn't sit right. I didn't delete anything. But a week later, when I checked the app again, the footage from that day was gone from the main cloud storage, automatically overwritten. According to the system's schedule, she must have assumed that meant it was gone forever. She didn't know I had already downloaded it to my laptop and then copied it onto a flash drive. Not because I planned to fight her, but because something in her tone that day told me she would never admit what actually happened. And now, sitting in that mediation room, listening to her describe me as distracted and unfit, I realized she had done exactly what I feared. She had turned her mistake into my failure. But this time, I wasn't going to carry the blame quietly, back in the mediation room. My mother finished telling her version of the story with a steady voice. If someone had walked in halfway through, they would have believed her. She sounded calm, responsible, protective. She was upstairs, she repeated. He could have been killed. I'm only trying to make sure that never happens again. The mediator nodded slowly and turned toward me. I could see concern forming in her expression. Not judgment yet, but doubt. And in custody cases, doubt is dangerous. Ms. Alvarez, she said carefully. This is a serious allegation. A child wandering into the street is not a small matter. I know, I replied. That's why I reviewed the security footage that same night. My mother's eyes flickered for a fraction of a second, but she recovered quickly. That footage was automatically deleted, she said smoothly. There's nothing to review. She said it with confidence. That was the moment she believed she had control of the narrative. She believed it was her word against mine. She believed I would become emotional and defensive, which would only strengthen her claim that I was unstable under pressure. I could feel my pulse in my ears, but my voice remained steady. I made a copy before it was deleted, I said. The room changed instantly. My mother turned toward me slowly. A copy? Yes. The mediator leaned forward. You have the footage? I do. For the first time since the session began, my mother did not have an immediate response. Her jaw tightened. That won't show what you think it does. I think it shows exactly what happened, I replied calmly. The mediator paused for a moment, then nodded. If you have relevant video evidence, we should review it. My hands did not shake when I reached into my bag. I had imagined this moment many times, but I never wanted it to come to this. I never wanted to sit in a room proving to strangers that I was capable of protecting my own child. But I would not let her rewrite that day. I placed the flash drive on the table. This is the full, unedited recording from that afternoon, I said. My mother shifted in her seat. You're making this dramatic, she muttered. No, I answered quietly. I'm making it accurate. The mediator signaled to the clerk to connect the footage to the office monitor. The screen flickered to life. For a brief second, before the video began, there was complete silence in the room. I looked at my mother. She avoided my eyes. She had walked into this mediation certain she could portray me as careless, certain she could paint herself as the responsible adult who had saved the day. She did not expect the truth to be waiting on a small piece of plastic in my hand. The video started to play, and everything she had said began to unravel. The video began without sound, just a clear view of our front yard and the gate. The timestamp in the corner showed the exact date and time my mother had described. At first, everything looked calm. Mateo was inside, visible through the glass door, moving around with his toy truck. A few seconds later, my mother stepped into view. She was holding her phone to her ear. She walked toward the gate. The mediator leaned slightly closer to the screen. My mother shifted in her seat. On the video. She reached down and unlatched the gate. She opened it partially and stepped just outside the property line, still talking on her phone. She didn't look back toward the house. Mateo appeared in the frame a few seconds later. He pushed the gate further open with both hands. It swung wide without resistance. He stepped out. My mother continued her conversation for several more seconds before turning her head. When she finally noticed he was no longer inside the yard, her posture changed instantly. She dropped her phone and rushed toward him. The mediator paused the footage. The room was completely silent. There was no interpretation needed, no complicated explanation. The camera showed who opened the gate. It showed who stepped away. It showed who failed to notice a 3-year-old walking toward the street. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The mediator slowly turned to my mother. Mrs. Alvarez, she said evenly, you told us your daughter left the gate unlocked. My mother swallowed. I must have opened it to check the mail. I don't remember. You also stated she was not supervising the child. She wasn't downstairs. My mother replied quickly. She was upstairs. Because you told her you were watching him, I said calmly. My mother's eyes flashed toward me. You should never assume, she insisted weakly. A mother should always. A mother did check, I interrupted gently. A mother installed cameras. A mother reviewed the footage. A mother saved a copy when something felt wrong. The mediator looked back at the screen. The footage clearly shows you opening the gate and stepping outside while on the phone, she said to my mother. It also shows the child leaving the yard during that time. My mother's composure cracked. Her voice grew sharper. I ran after him. I brought him back. Yes, the mediator acknowledged. After he had already exited the property, the difference mattered. It wasn't about who grabbed him last. It was about who created the risk in the first place. I felt my throat tighten, but not from fear, from relief. For weeks after that day, I had questioned myself. I had replayed the moment in my head, wondering if I had been careless, wondering if I should have ignored my work call, wondering if I had failed him. Now the truth was frozen on a screen for everyone to see. I never endangered my son. I said quietly. I trusted the wrong person. The words hung in the air. My mother didn't look at me anymore. She stared at the table. The mediator turned off the monitor. Based on what we have reviewed, she said carefully, the allegation that Ms. Alvarez neglected her child during this incident is not supported by the evidence. Not supported by the evidence. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. My mother had come into that room believing I would crumble under accusation. Instead, the camera had done the talking, and it had told the truth without emotion, without exaggeration, without bias. Just facts. And facts are very hard to argue with. After the screen went dark, the silence in the room felt different. It wasn't tense anymore. It was decisive. The mediator folded her hands on the table and looked directly at my mother. Mrs. Alvarez, you presented this incident as evidence that your daughter is unfit to parent, she said calmly. The footage shows that you were the one who opened the gate and stepped away. My mother's voice was smaller now. I didn't mean for him to get out, she said. It was an accident. I understand that, the mediator replied. But that is not the same as saying your daughter was negligent. The difference was clear. Accidents happen. False accusations are choices. My mother tried one last time to shift the focus. Elena still left him with me, she said. She shouldn't have assumed. She relied on a trusted adult who offered supervision. The mediator interrupted gently but firmly. That is not unreasonable. I watched my mother's posture collapse in slow motion. The confidence she walked in with was gone. The controlled tone, the careful wording. She had built her case on the assumption that there was no proof left. Without that assumption, there was nothing standing. I was scared, she said quietly. He could have been hurt. I was scared too, I replied. That's why I checked the footage. The mediator looked between us. It appears there was a breakdown of communication that day, she said. However, the claim that Ms. Alvarez is unfit due to negligence is not supported by what we have seen. Not supported. That phrase settled into the room like a verdict. My mother's eyes finally lifted to mine. There was something there I hadn't seen before. Not anger, not superiority, embarrassment. Because she hadn't just misremembered the event. She had tried to use it. She had tried to take a moment of shared fear and turn it into a legal weapon against me. You told the court the footage was erased, the mediator continued. Were you aware a copy existed? My mother hesitated. I assumed it was gone. Assumed. That word echoed. You assumed I would have nothing, I said quietly. She didn't respond. For weeks, she had told relatives that I was careless, that she feared for her grandson's safety, that she was stepping in to protect him. Now the narrative was gone. The footage didn't just clear me, it exposed her, and that changed the balance of everything. The mediator leaned back in her chair and reviewed her notes. Custody decisions are based on the best interest of the child, she said carefully. We evaluate stability, safety, and demonstrated caregiving. She looked directly at me. Ms. Alvarez, there is no evidence presented today that you have placed your child at risk. Then she turned to my mother. However, presenting incomplete or misleading information in a custody matter is extremely serious. My mother's hands tightened together. I wasn't trying to mislead anyone, she said quickly. But you did, the mediator replied. The room was quiet again. For months, I had lived with the fear that one mistake, real or imagined, could cost me my son. I had imagined worst-case scenarios. I had prepared myself emotionally for the possibility that someone else might decide I wasn't enough. Now, sitting in that same chair, I realized something clearly. The only person who had endangered him that day was the one accusing me. And the only reason I was calm in this moment was because I had trusted myself enough to keep the truth. Based on the information reviewed, the mediator continued, there is no basis to alter the current custody arrangement. My chest loosened for the first time all morning. No alteration, no supervised visitation, no legal restrictions. My son was staying with me. My mother exhaled slowly. as if she had just realized the weight of what she almost caused. This wasn't just about losing an argument. It was about nearly breaking trust beyond repair. When the session ended, I stepped out into the hallway. My son was sitting in the waiting area with a coloring book, swinging his legs under the chair. He looked up the moment he saw me. "Mommy," he said, running into my arms. I held him tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of his hair. "You okay?" he asked in his small voice. "I'm okay," I whispered. "We're okay." Behind us, my mother stepped out of the room. She didn't say anything. For the first time, she had no argument left. No version of the story that could overpower evidence. She had told the judge I was unfit. The footage showed who truly failed that day. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to humiliate her. I didn't need revenge. I had the truth. And the truth walked out of that building holding my hand.